I'm so excited that you and I are about to have this wonderful conversation about all things noble poverty. And I remember our first conversation when you brought that terminology up for me. I feel like all of these light bulbs went off and we dug really deep into what does that mean and how do we solve for it and who are the folks that are most impacted by what the thing that is noble poverty. So I'm very excited to untangle it and to think about this idea of how do we dismantle that for ourselves. But I first want to kick off this conversation by getting a little bit of an understanding of who you are and what you do, because something else that you shared with me when we first met was that you're a financial therapist. And as somebody who's been in therapy for the majority of my life, I'm like dumbfounded. There are specific types of therapies that can help me solve other and very specific areas of my life. So tell us everything. Give us the tea. What do you do?
Yeah. No, I get that reaction a lot where people are like, wait, that's a thing? Like, what's financial therapy? So, financial therapy, for folks who've never heard of it before, is an intersection of emotions and money, right? So, a financial therapist's job is to help us heal our relationship with money. So, it implies that money is emotional, money has shame and anxiety and dread attached to it for a lot of folks. And so a lot of us are mental health professionals coming in being like, hey, I already talk about trauma. I already talk about emotions. Let's now crack open the money conversation. And then the other home discipline is financial planners. So people who are absolutely willing to talk numbers and sit in that with folks. So financial therapy is a pretty young discipline, which is probably why some of these people listening have not heard of it before. It was coined in 2008. And there's about 100 of us that are certified. So, certified financial therapist. Happy to be here. Happy to talk about money because this is important.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize how new it is, and only 100 folks that have that certification. That's pretty incredible. Can you give us an idea of who your typical financial therapy patient or client might be?
Yeah. So, for my practice specifically, I work with only therapists. So, at this point, there are lots of people who are avoidant with money. They say that 70% of mental health professionals are avoidant with money. So there's a lot of work to be
Hmm.
done in just my industry. But financial therapy can benefit all sorts of people. It can be nonprofit leaders, which we're here to talk about. It could be couples. It could be part of premarital counseling. It could be, hey, I'm an entrepreneur trying to build something and want to make sure I know my numbers for that. Because money is emotional, that emotion drives a lot of the behaviors of spending and saving and values based purchases, things like that. So there's a lot to uncover in the financial therapy space. I have colleagues who are working with
Hmm.
people with ADHD, impulse spenders, women, moms. There's lots of different niche down financial therapists, which is great to name.
Yeah. Awesome. So anyone and everybody really can benefit from doing a little bit of financial therapy work. And like
Mhm.
you mentioned, we're here to talk about folks in the social impact and the nonprofit workforce, nonprofit space. For folks that don't know me, that's the work that I do. I'm a well-being coach and a leadership coach and a well-being consultant, and I work primarily with nonprofit leaders and nonprofit organizations in creating a culture of well-being for their employees so that we can really help folks be in social impact work for the long term, because we have our work cut out for us, right? There is always work that is needed to be done in that space. And something that's come up so frequently, especially over these last 4 years and going through the pandemic, is that first and foremost, there is no one definition of well being or how to solve for it, and that it's multifaceted. And something that's come up in those conversations is that money actually has a lot to do with our own well being, having a sense of well being, and also planning for our own well being. And so, again, when we connected and we started to have this conversation, and you dropped the bomb that is noble poverty, I felt like for me, again, the light bulbs went off of like, oh, wait, I think this is a narrative or a mindset that I've fallen victim to, and other folks that have worked in social impact and nonprofit spaces have fallen victim to are very familiar with. So why don't you give us the lowdown and like a very clear definition of exactly what noble poverty is?
Yeah. So noble poverty is an experience, to your point. It's emotional. And it's, in essence, putting ourselves in financial distress to serve others.
Mm,
So, from social impact spaces, from nonprofit spaces, from nurses, doctors, therapists spaces, this starts to feel relatable, right? Of like, I'm putting myself in financial distress to serve others. I don't want to be seen as greedy. I want to be seen as helpful. So I'm not going to advocate for my own financial needs to make that so.
Yeah, and I think what's particularly challenged, and dare I say even insidious, about noble poverty is that it exists in this kind of like cyclical system, so to speak, right? We've developed this mindset that we can't have wealth. It's greedy to ask for a raise. It's even dirty, right? To want to be
Mhm.
earning a certain amount of money. And then so many social impact and nonprofit professionals are working inside of organizations that ultimately confirm that, like, we can't give
Mhm.
you a raise, we're non for we're not for profit, we don't have extra money for bonuses or to help you have a livable or even thriving wage. And so I think what's so incredibly interesting to me that this term gets to is not just, again, the emotional experience that individuals have, but how this is part of a bigger system, and that the work in like breaking out of the mindset is probably really deep and really intentional. But maybe the first thing for us to clarify and to understand about this terminology is like, how do you know when you're struggling with it? Like, how do you know if you've got a noble poverty situation or mindset going on?
Yeah, I love this question, which is why I'm smiling, because for a lot of people, now that they know that term exists, that would be a natural follow up of like, how do I know if I'm experiencing it? So
Right.
we kind of alluded to some of the behavioral things that'll show up of like, maybe it's I don't advocate for a raise, I don't raise my rates if I work for myself, I don't talk about money that's owed to me, I never bring it up with my boss. For
Mm,
other folks, if there's clients that owe money, they're never asking, hey, can we get this like situated or reconciled? And so these are also the folks that don't like fundraising, which is interesting because in a not-for-profit space, fundraising is a big part of that work. And so there's a lot of
right.
discomfort talking about money. So what I've noticed with some of these leaders is that they'll do it for fundraising, but they won't advocate for their own personal needs with money. Like they'll be like, I can go into a fundraising mode, but I won't talk about money in my personal life. And so those are just some of the warning signs that people might resonate with. For a lot of people, it's just the emotional toll of this is not me and my values. This is me in avoidance. This is me in scarcity. So some of those key words around mindset would also apply.
Hmm. And then thinking about some of the risks, I assume that this is not a formal diagnosis, but I'm thinking about it almost like a formal diagnosis. Like, what are some of the risks if you don't really do something about this? And I'm thinking about it through the lens of, again, the bigger picture, the bigger pie that is well being. If you are
Mhm.
kind of stuck in this cycle of, I don't deserve more money, I can't ask for a raise, I can't up my prices, I imagine that has a domino effect on every other element, every other aspect of our lives. Like, if we aren't earning enough, then we can't really invest in ourselves. We can't invest in the community. We can't really make our dreams come true, right? So, from your
Right.
perspective, from even like a clinical perspective, what are some of the risks or the consequences if folks don't address this?
I mean, there's so many layers to it. I'm thinking of my colleague Alex Castro-Croy's acronym PERMS, which stands for physical, emotional, relational, mental, and spiritual. And all
Mm,
five of those domains are impacted when we're in noble poverty, right? So physically, there might be anxiety, stress, headaches, muscle tension because we are stressed out. I mean, put anyone in a place of losing a job or recession, and we start to see all these physical ailments show up. So that's popping in my mind.
mhm,
Emotionally, maybe I'm feeling disconnected from loved ones. I feel like I had to withdraw. I can't connect with anyone. I can't be social because usually the first two things that people cut out of their budget when money is tight is socializing and eating
me.
out,
Yeah, that's me.
right? So emotionally, I'm not connecting with my people, my community, as you kind of alluded to there. Relationally, same kind of component of, am I now picking fights with my partner? Are we not seeing eye to eye on how we're spending? Am I trying to dictate what we spend money on or like cut corners or live off ramen noodles for 3 months to make my budget work? So deprivation is a big part of this too, to feel deprived of things that bring
Mm,
joy or value to our life. Mentally, it's the worry, the anxiety, the dread of what if I can't pay my bills? I'm maxing out a credit card. I'm taking out another credit card. Lots of shame, doom, and gloom in that domain of life. And then spiritually, it might be reinforcing the very beliefs that noble poverty brings out in people, which is money is corrupt, money is greedy. To have money means I'm a bad person. which just saying that to you is ridiculous, right? But like that's something we all believe. Like if I make money, I'm bad. I can't be a good helper and make money. And you and I are
Wow.
trying to break that down and say, what if we could be both? What if I could be a really effective helper and make a good living for myself and my family? Why not both?
Hmm. That both and is so critical. And I'm really excited to pivot the conversation to how do we work on this? How do we get over this hump? How do we, like, what next steps can we take to start to solve for this? But I want to play devil's advocate and ask one more question,
Yeah,
because
of course.
I think for me, as someone who has been in the space of noble poverty for a huge chunk of my career, I completely hear everything that you just shared about this. I think you said it was PERMS.
The
Uh,
acronym.
the, the PERMS acronym, super helpful. I'm going to have to write that down. And as I'm hearing all these, I'm like, yep, I've experienced that. Yes, that was my reality at one point. And what was present alongside of that sense of knowing was also this justification that comes to the surface of, well, but so the devil's
Yeah.
advocate I want to play here is there any benefit to living in noble poverty? And do the justifications that come to the surface that are in defense of noble poverty ever truly make sense?
The short answer, and some of your watchers are not going to like this, is no. No, it doesn't actually ever help you. And why I'm smiling, partly just out of playfulness, but partly because I think what you're alluding to is systems have made this the norm, right? The idea that the first word is noble, right? So we've like celebrated poverty, we've idolized poverty, we've said this is how you get somewhere. Our bosses say you have to work to get to this place, you have to put in your time, you have to show that you're worth this investment. There's all these phrases that come out in the workplace and maybe even in like graduate school or undergrad, depending on a person's degree and industry, that's like, you do this for the cause. You sacrifice what you need to for the cause. You are a martyr for the cause. And that's
Mm,
probably why we're also talking about social impact and nonprofit spaces, right? Because that's like prevalent. It's not you're here to make money, it's you're here to do good, and you can't do both. So as that little voice in your head's like, yes, but I'm like, I wonder how ingrained that is from the generations that came before us, from our family members, from our communities. Because when anyone tries to come up against that comfort zone, to come out of that circle of community and say, I want both, they are immediately cut down. They're like, oh, you're so greedy. You're so corrupt. How dare you say you want more money? And
mhm.
so as those little like voices pop in for people watching this or listening, get curious of, is that your money belief or is that somebody else's? Is this your society's money belief? Is this your grandparents' money belief? Is this your parents' money belief? Is this your first boss and their money belief of you got to put in
That
the
one got
time?
me. That one
Yeah.
got me. The first boss.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So like I say that with a lot of compassion. As a financial therapist, I hold a lot of space with zero judgment, but also this playfulness of like, let's get curious about what that belief is and who owns it and why we've naturally adopted that voice in our head if it's not ours to own.
Oof. Wow. 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 I'm already feeling like I want to do one of my well-being somatic practices, like as I think about and talk about some of the stuff of just like
Yes,
kind of like wiping my body clean of like that is not mine to carry. And
that's right.
so now let's talk about what folks can start to do to quite literally like let go and shed some of that work. As someone who's been in well-being and wellness spaces for over a decade now, I find again that somatic practices like yoga or even a spiritual practice can be really helpful in just getting grounded, having the conversation, identifying where you might even be physically holding like the insecurity or even the pain around money and noble poverty, and working through that with breath work, stretching. Um, I think a mindset that's also been helpful for me is recognizing that I need to even redefine my own definition of what it means to be rich or what it means to be wealthy. Like, I'm not going to
Hmm.
be the Jeff Bezos type. Like, I don't necessarily see myself like having a ridiculous amount of wealth. But when I think about having a lot of money or having enough money, I already see myself as a person who's going to invest that back into the community. So when I
Yeah.
think about shedding my own noble poverty, it is in support of living a happy and healthy life and also having more to give. So that's just one mentality that's been helpful for me. But I would also love to hear like, what are your best tips? What are your best practices?
Yeah. I mean, I love that you named kind of the body sensation Because in financial therapy, that is a big part of the work. It's not just what you're thinking and what you're saying out loud, it's what you're experiencing in the body. The muscle tension behind your eyes, behind your heart, check the soles of your
Mm,
feet, right? So we have this like whole scan of the body to be like, where's that living? What's activated right now? Where's the self compassion touch on the body to make this feel better? So
mm.
that's a huge part of the work is just like being present. Some people don't even realize how pervasive those money beliefs are until we put them in financially stressful situations like holidays and travel and going to a wedding that you can't afford to go to,
Yeah, yeah.
not getting a tax rebate or refund, right? So like there's lots of different scenarios that bring out these pervasive recurring money beliefs. And so just being aware of the body's reaction to that is a big part of the work and part of the healing, as you kind of alluded to. Other tools, I mean, movement's always a good idea. Like, I don't expect anyone to just like sit here and like be frozen, like, 'cause that's actually avoidance, right? It's like, just like, oh, I'm white knuckling it, I can't move. So a lot of movement, a lot of flow. I have people reframe a lot of like, okay, we're going from a scarcity mindset, and actually, maybe not surprising to you, I don't like the word abundance. I actually like the word plentiful or enough. And
Ooh, I
so
like that.
yeah. So like letting people sit in that and say what resonates, what feels like a, skin deep level that would actually feel true. And then mapping out warning signs that I'm backsliding into those negative behaviors versus mapping out how do I want to get to that healthy belief about money. So my true
Mhm.
job as a financial therapist is helping people land in neutral, right? We've got like 50 to 200 money beliefs average per person. Most of those might be negative. Some of those might be positive. But my job is where's the neutrality? Where is it like money is a tool? Might be a belief there. Money is transactional. Money just is. And some people are like, I'm not there. I'm not at neutral. Like, just like try these phrases on. But a lot of my clients want to live there because it feels a lot better than anxiety, dread, shame, depression, suicidal thought. I mean, that's where this like bigger impact is showing up with the negative beliefs.
Wow. I love that idea of kind of like this middle neutral ground to just be grounded. That sounds like it could be super helpful for folks. And as you were sharing that, my mind went back to something you shared earlier about fundraising professionals, which I am one of those, who have this interesting dynamic that they can make what we call the ask, right? The big ask to the donor or write the big grant application to make magical, incredible things happen for others, but can't figure out how to quite do that for themselves. And so, what is your recommendation? And I'm sure there's a lot of overlap here, but what is your recommendation in helping folks like make the ask? Like, what's the work about? What's the work around self advocacy when it comes
Yeah.
to this next step of like, all right, I've found this neutral ground of like my relationship with money, but what is the next step in being able to really ask for what I need?
hmm Yeah, it makes me think of the book The Soul of Money, which is very much about like
Ooh.
heart-centered fundraising and putting money towards causes that matter to you. And so the soul of money and all the work in financial therapy, it really anchors into values. What's valued in your life? Is it community? Is it family? Is it advocacy? Is it learning? Is it growth? Right? Think of the values exercises you may have done in college where they like had you sort out all the values to get to your top five. In psychology spaces, that was very common where we did that exercise. But people's values don't tend to change very much once they're adults. So once they're solidified, you're kind of checking in on the values. So when I'm making this big ask, are my values driving that request? Is it highlighting the program because I truly at the heart of heart believe in the program or what we're trying to make money for? Is it I'm doing it because it's my job? And that kind of falls
Mhm.
flat from that passion place, right? So when we're speaking from the heart, when we're speaking from our values, we tend to be more enthusiastic and authentic, which I think makes the ask that much more successful in my experience
Mhm.
when I was in the nonprofit space. So I think about values, having people check in on those. My best question to ask is okay, if you know your values, how are they looking right now? Are they looking healthy? Are they present? Are any of your top 3 to 5 values absent and need a little bit of TLC from you, a little bit of attention from you to make those better? And so, for a lot of the folks I'm serving, which are under earners, therapists, it's what is the heart place for this? When we're asking a client or raising our rates or raising money for a cause, how do we speak from the heart so it feels authentic? And that keeps us from that money is corrupt place because we're not embodying that.
Right. That's helpful. And there's this quote I've been using and sharing with myself, and then also sharing with my community, is to remind folks that you as an individual are a worthy cause. I feel like in the philanthropic space, I see this language all the time, like, we gave to this worthy cause and we want to elevate the story of that worthy cause. And that's great. That's great. And that's not going anywhere. And I try to encourage people to think about that or apply that same thinking to yourself. You as an individual are a worthy cause that are doing great things, that deserve all of the happiness in the world. And so how do you make that type of ask in support of you? And what I'm hearing that you're sharing is that it's making sure that you're totally grounded in those values, like really, really, really leaning into them. That's great. Okay, I've got a couple more questions for you.
Yeah.
This next one is putting me on my soapbox a tiny bit. But as someone who is so passionate about well-being in the social impact space, I know that I spend a lot of my time working with individuals one-on-one, helping them be really more self-accountable to this kind of work and advocating for themselves. And then also remembering to take like the 30,000 view approach, and remembering that we're operating in a system that isn't necessarily conducive for this type of work to flourish. And I know that we are shifting in those directions, and it's going to take time and it's going to take work. But I'm curious, what do you think it would take for there to be a bigger collective shift, even on kind of like a systems level, so that entire organizations or even the entire nonprofit sector would have healthier mindsets or healthier relationships with money mentalities for the people that are doing this work?
Yeah. So many thoughts. I mean, part of it is going to be paying people what they're worth and or giving them opportunities to earn bonuses or have things happen at the end of the year. I think it's really going to boil down to a mental shift away from this is how it's always been done. So like people at the top are like, we've been doing this for decades and it's worked, right? But what they're not looking at is retention of the people who are passionate about the cause, burnout of the people who are passionate about the cause. When I was in the nonprofit space, I was in a course where they said the majority of people in nonprofit sector are women, master's level or higher, and they're being paid 30,000 a year. And I was like, this was this is like 5 years ago. So not even that long ago, but they were saying, yeah, it's like
Wow.
30,000 you make, you have a master's degree and you're a woman. And I was like, oh, there's something predatory about that. So there's going to have to be a system overhaul for this to actually work. And it's not just pay people what they're worth, but also like model what it looks like to not have people at the very top with significant wealth and the people at the bottom have nothing. So I think of that guy, I think his name was Dan. He had a company in the for-profit space. And he's like, I'm going to put everyone's income up to like $75,000 or
70,
whatever it
yep.
was. I can't remember.
I
Yeah.
was just talking about him yesterday. That's so
Yeah.
crazy.
Dan Price, right? Yeah. So like he did that and everyone was like, you're crazy. Your business is going to close. And what he saw was people actually were committed to the work. They did better work. They were more productive. They were happier. They met their own values-based spending goals, so they can now afford a house, have a family, have a vehicle, whatever they couldn't have before. His business was healthier and more productive and generated more income when he took care of his people. So if he can do that in the for-profit space, how do we make that happen in the nonprofit space? I think that's the ultimate question.
It's a big question, and I could unpack that from so many angles, and I won't.
Yeah.
But I love, love, love what you just shared. Those are such good pieces, such good takeaways. My last question to you is wanting to know more about what's coming next for you. I know that you've got a book that is officially out. So tell us about that.
Yeah.
Tell us about other opportunities to learn about your work, to connect with you, and all those good things.
Yeah, so the book isn't quite out. So the book will come out in early 2025. Right now, it's with beta readers, which is very exciting to get the feedback we've been craving for the last few months. But the book is on your Enneagram and money. So looking at these money beliefs, looking at your personality style, looking at core beliefs of what makes you feel valued in your world. And we're looking at spending and saving dynamics based on Enneagram type. So it was really fascinating to interview under earners, which is our audience. So we interviewed a bunch of therapists, OT, PT, nonprofit leaders, and
Wow.
said, tell us your story, tell us your money story. And we had a hypothesis of like, I think based on your Enneagram type, you're going to present a certain way. And for the most part, it was confirmed, which was always validating as an author. Like, I have an idea. Does this have value? So long story short, the book is going to come out early 2025. We imagine it's going to be applicable to this audience, to anyone who identifies as an under earner, anyone who's in noble poverty or scarcity, or anyone who has a loved one who's struggling with money, because it's all the financial therapy skills and tools I would give to someone one-on-one in book form, and eventually it'll be a workbook as well, while also helping them feel seen and giving them the language of, I'm noticing what's happening now. I know when I'm triggered. I know when I'm backsliding into scarcity. So giving them more awareness than they've ever had before about their money.
Wow. Tell us the name of the book one more time.
Your Enneagram and Money is the primary title. The other title is way too long.
Excellent. Excellent. So we will be on the lookout for that release in early 2025. In the meantime, how can we stay in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm all over Instagram. I'm a serial entrepreneur. So, in addition to being a financial therapist, I'm still a mental health therapist, professor, author of 8 other books. So, if people do follow me on any of the social media, I like to give that disclaimer because if they're like, whoa, there's a lot of stuff on here that's not specific to this audience. But Instagram at Khara Croswaite, LinkedIn. My website has all of my entrepreneurial projects, which is crosswaitecounselingplc.com. But yeah, hopefully people can stay in touch about the book and what's coming from that book, because so far the beta readers are saying, I feel seen. And that makes me feel really good about this project.
Oh, that's so good. I can't wait to get my hands on that book. And thank you to everyone who dropped in and listened. I will make sure to have those links available um, in the show notes or via the caption so you can stay in touch. Well, Khara, thank you so much. I'm so happy we got to do this. I'm so happy we really got to unpack this further and in a way that can really share this information widely. I hope folks took something important away from this conversation and can stay in touch with Khara and ask more questions and hopefully get that book in early 2025 because we all need to be seen in this work. So let's make sure that we're doing that for ourselves as well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Khara.